Oh, no, I'm on.
This is our thing. Yeah, that's. I'm pretty sure. Okay, cruiser. Sure.
Brad, I don't trust that look he's giving you. Would you do the football power ranking? No, and Decorah was like, hey, I got my good. Oh.
So we will go ahead and call to order the October, strange as that is to say, regular meeting of the Decorah Community School District Board of Directors. Note that we have everyone present and accounted for. Sydney, do you want to read the mission statement?
Sure. At Decorah Community School District, we embrace student learning and well-being as our fundamental purpose. We will, in partnership with our students, families, and community, make the world a better place. The mission of the Decorah Community School District is learning, thriving, creating our legacy. The vision of the Decorah Community School District is Decorah Community School District will be a collaborative, innovative, learning-centered organization empowering students to embrace their personal strengths and create their future.
Thank you. Under old business, we have second reading of policy 501.16 regarding homeless children and youth. We've gone through this once, but why don't you remind us what
We're literally changing one phrase that identified the person who's responsible as the homeless liaison to just a staff member designated by the superintendent, so that we're not locked into a position, especially since we don't have that position anymore.
Good reason.
Okay, I so move to approve the second reading of policy number 501.16, homeless children and youth.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next, would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. I can second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Is that John? Second?
Yes.
I'm sorry, thank you.
I'll speak up.
My ears, thanks.
That's just twice as far away. she used to be. Okay, this is the time for communication from the public. Oops, no, I'm jumping ahead again. Consent agenda. Anyone have any questions or anything that requires attention from the consent agenda? I didn't notice anything requiring separate action.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this is the time for communication from the public. As I look around the room, I don't see any unfamiliar faces. So unless someone has something they wish to address, we'll move along. Okay, no presentation this month. New business, we have been in negotiations with the Donovan Group, and we are at the point of entering into an agreement with them. You want to fill us in?
We talked to Jerry Gallagher 6 months ago about working with us. He works with school districts to kind of communicate, help with the facilitated communications on, promoting the district and getting information out regarding, well, in this case, a bond issue. So his timeline is they usually like to work 6 months prior to the bond issue. So, our earliest bond issue at this point in time is going to be November of 2024. That would put us at maybe working with him in May, but he wrote it so that we could extend it by months. So I know lots of districts have used it out of a group, feel really good about it. They're not going to form a committee. They won't be a vote yes or vote no committee. Obviously, we hope they vote yes, but because we can't promote either side with district resources, but they may, he's like, as maybe you recall, it's about getting information out and how to package and make sure people understand what they're voting on. But he's open to however we want to do it. So I'd recommend that we approve this, working with the Donovan Group. And then my thought is that Cindy and I, that being Cindy's kind of area of expertise, we work with them to come up with a plan for Decorah. But we're only voting, I guess, on the Donovan Group.
I'm really excited to work with an outside consultant on communications. And I think that just because of the nature of land acquisition and conversations, things have been really quiet for the last 6 months. And I've heard a lot of, people are curious in our community. So I would, also like to start working with them sooner than that 6 month time frame, just to get the ball rolling and get questions answered and start communicating effectively.
Along those lines of communication, I remember one of the things that we were kind of admonished at the down at the breakout sessions at the school board convention was that you never want to have one school board member having more information than everybody else. That said, we've had Ryan work with purchasing of the facility here through Boltmer and other occasions where we've kind of delegated those types of things. And I've given some input a little bit on construction related activities and so on like that. And of course, Ron has been invaluable in helping out with the review of legal plats and matters and so on like that. And the only reason I bring this up is that I'd like to make sure that we have the continued communication we've been very good about doing, so that the rest of the board stays abreast of the messaging that would be sent out to the community on our behalf. And that's, I don't have any suspicions or anything like that, that I'm trying to subvert into the minutes here. Darlene's not even writing this down, so I'm wasting air. But it's just one of those things where it kind of sticks in my head. And so I know you would do a good job of that.
So when we talked and picked our architectural firm, two or three of them, I guess two or three that we talked to all worked with the Donovan group, so this is our guy, and I 100% agree. My question would be is, if they normally would do the 6 months in advance, but here we are about 13 months out. If we sign a contract with him and it's $2,500 a month, it looks like here. And I do think we could use some help having conversations with the public and talking to the public about what we're going to do and what we plan on doing going forward before the bond issue. Is there enough information that we, that we would spend $2,500 for the next 6 months where he normally would be engaged? It'd be nice if we could do it on a cost basis for something that we would need, because we might not need to really use his services a lot in the next 5 months.
Well, I'm a man, maybe it would be a situation where we could dive in for a month and then pause.
Yeah.
And then, revisit in that. I guess I'm not suggesting that we have you talked with him about pricing in recent conversations? Because I know
So
that you weren't thinking about starting immediately in November.
No, and so the two things that maybe I can add is they'll look things over and kind of in anticipation, just kind of do some smaller things for free. When he wrote this up, he was like, okay, we would just extend it, and every month we extend it. So whenever we hit the start button, that's when they're gonna start billing us $2,500. Could we hit the start button and then pause? That's probably a conversation that we could just have with him and just find out what he's comfortable with doing.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I think there's two ways to accomplish what maybe you're suggesting, Ron, and one is just to kind of use them informally, and then in the same right, if we suggest that, if you need to start billing us for hourly, that let's talk about that.
Sure.
Yeah, so.
That could make all the sense in the world. Okay.
Yeah. Well, perhaps with the understanding that we want to explore intermittent usage, we could still consider approval.
Yeah, and the agreement reads to start in January.
Mhm.
I just want to note that January 1st.
2023, so I think it's a misprint.
Yeah.
It'd probably be January 1st of 2024.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agreement with the Donovan Group with the correction of the date of January 1st, 2024.
I will make the second that.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. Sean, why don't you explain the transportation software that is being proposed, since you're familiar with it?
So I'll just set the stage for you, Sean. So just kind of looking at how trying to be efficient with how we do our day-to-day business, and always growing and being more efficient includes being more automated or electronic, so, John's gonna tell us about the transportation software. He's gonna tell you, among other things, that he's worked it successfully in McKee. The big advantages from my perspective, the stuff I've heard is, the old system is more of a paper pencil or Google Sheets and put students in. That's time consuming, so that takes up a lot of staff. And then among other things, it doesn't give feedback. It also has a manual step where you have to put that information back into PowerSchool. And you can like cough if I'm really off base, but I know the secretary's requested for me, like, hey, I've got parents asking me, can I get the. That wasn't a cough to stop, was it, Charlie? Because Director Yelly picked up on that immediately. And I thought, oh, okay,
Just a comment.
yeah, I thought so,
Thanks for asking.
yeah, for sure. One of the things that the secretaries did request, was just, quicker, route information at the start of the school year for parents. So to that end, we started looking at this last year, and timing wise, you got to get queued up to get on the list for, 6 to 8 months in advance. So I think I've prefaced it with all my qualifiers, and I'm ready to have you explain the rest. And I guess I would say we know that in the past, we tried a different system that was much more elaborate that didn't work. But this is a smaller system, does less things, but is more efficient. And Sean said success. Sean knows how it works.
Yes, I guess to add a little, there are other schools in our area that use it. I remember when we implemented it and walk on it, that's kind of one of the things we looked at. Another thing that we looked at here, along with when we did it and walk on, is we want a system that we can build if we want to. When we say that, I mean, right now we're buying the routing portion of it, but if we want to add, the student tagging thing that we had issues with before, if we wanted to do that in the future, you can add it. There's add-ons, and they call it their suite. But we don't have to buy it. That's the nice part about this system, is it's, not an all-in-one, you gotta buy a huge thing to get it done. We can buy it in our pieces, so the routing part of it is the part that we're looking at. It automated, it auto pulls information from PowerSchool, so as parents register, the registration then gets moved by the secretaries into PowerSchool. Then a import process happens from PowerSchool to this system. In walk-on, we set it up nightly, so it's every 24 hours. On busier times of the year, you can go in and manually do it, so it's twice or 3 or 4 times a day. And then it also exports back to PowerSchool, so you can say, I want bus times. It gets very granular. It's kind of amazing. Once it pulls it in, you can have it auto route and say, we have 32 buses. Here's all the kids, put them in a bus. This is how many we want in a bus, so if we have capacities, you can put all that in and it'll build it for you. And then from there, you can tweak it. You can grab, a student and it's literally like dragging a line on Google Maps. You drag the line and it drops it. And it'll reroute everybody, put it in different times. And then it has a component where Jim can go around with the cell phone and verify the route or verify the times with the cell phone to make sure it's accurate. It's a pretty nice system. It links in with the GIS system. So the initial cost for the first year is an implementation and then a mapping system. So they put in all of the postal addresses from like the Winship County GIS into the system. And that's a part of that implementation cost. That way we get true addresses, not Google guess addresses. It's actual addresses. In a nutshell. Any questions?
When the current system was discussed and sold to us, it had a tracking mechanism for the students where they're supposed to clip on a little device onto the backpack, and there's a scanner inside of the bus. that was supposed to be able to keep track of all the students and never would. Never would. The other part was that there was a GPS unit on the buses, and so you could always know where the buses were. So I don't think the tracking thing is at all a good idea. Would we know where the buses are, by GPS? Because that seems like kind of a fucking standard item for, long over the road trucks, but I don't know if that's an expensive thing or not. I don't know where that is with what you got.
Yeah, we utilize a software called Verizon Connect. It's a Verizon-based GPS tracker. It's not the one you guys originally put in. It's cheaper. That's kind of why we moved to that one from what was there previously. That is just tracking. It'll track. Chris can use some of the functions in there to do like mild oilage changes. You can say, for band 43, I want every 5,000 miles, it'll send an alert once it gets to 5,000 miles. You can build out little alerts like that. Otherwise, yeah, it does the GPS.
So you guys do have GPS tracking on the vehicles? Oh, wow, terrific, okay. I mean, it's, the day will come where you're able to implant the chip in your head and everybody knows where everybody is at, but we're not quite there yet, so.
It works. The GPS tracking, in my mind, is more of a safety thing. Especially when it's snowy out and the bus gets stuck in the driveway and the bus driver is a substitute bus driver and doesn't know where he's at. Jim can really quickly pull it up, figure out where he's at and get somewhere.
I suppose in some ways, these things kind of supply the tracking of where individual people are at.
The same thing with those athletic buses or buses on, going to speed contest or whatever, and some might be in Des Moines or whatever, we sure can keep track of those buses as well.
Yep.
But that's not part of this, that's part of the other system. Yeah. Do you see any economy of scale here where we put all the, now we're doing everything by hand and doing it by hand, that this process could give us some advice or maybe able to gain some money by having less miles traveled because of the way it organizes the routes?
I guess not really, yeah. I think walk on lost a half a route and then they did it. They found that many, corners and things that they wouldn't get. I can't remember if it's left-hand turns or right-hand turns, but there's like a rule, a driving rule.
No left-hand turn.
No left-hand turns.
And so it will follow that with the GPS and the address calculation.
My assumption, if walk on can save a half a route, we could probably save 3/4 of the route.
Well, they got a lot of travel there.
Why stop at 3/4?
Right, yeah.
A route and a half or bust, yeah.
Well, be interesting to see 6 months or a year from now, if we do see some benefit in that area.
And we would approve this expenditure now to get on their list so that they could start getting our stuff over this spring, summer, and we're not gonna be able to implement this until September of 2024.
I would say by the start of school, we should be.
Oh, yeah, well, sure, thanks.
That's, yeah. He said within 3 months, we'll have our instance, our cloud, computer. From there, they start putting in the maps. That stuff takes time, so it's about 6 months out to get the training part of it started. So we started importing apps and showing Jim and Chris how to tweak the system.
There was one other aspect that they sold us on that original system. This was like, I don't know, 8 years ago. Maybe some of you remember that, but it was limiting the time on the buses. Yeah, for students to do that as well, so that you don't have somebody on there for an hour and a half.
Yep. You can do that, yeah, you can say, ride time, longest ride time for a child is which state law dictates a certain amount of time.
Okay. Pretty thoughtful through.
So what our anticipation be after the 3rd year? Something somewhere in the 2nd and 3rd, we're not gonna have to re-up and buy a new $14,000 expenditure.
That's Basically, what he said every year after that, all you're paying for is the hosting side of it and the board, which is the 3,712. They'll tell you, expect a 10% increase every 3 years, just because it's the market.
And as a non-instructional software, this would be a PEPAL eligible expense.
Right.
Okay, any further discussion?
I don't see any disadvantages.
Except the money.
Well, I think it's a good investment.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the purchase of the transportation software. Along with the transportation software costs and recommendations and as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, it's only October, but we've already had some scheduling issues.
Yeah.
And we know there will be more to come. So being proactive with a couple of suggested changes.
Yeah, a couple of recommendations for calendar modifications. So the first one is we designated, I think back at the May board meeting, that we would do snow makeup days for the first 4 days. That last week of May, so I think the last day was the 17th of May, and then with the one heat day, we're now Monday, the 20th. So we had assigned 4 snow days or 4 weather related days, I guess, canceled days. So just as a recommendation that we officially say that Friday, May 25th would be the 5th weather makeup day. So hopefully that one, that I don't think is super controversial. And the next idea, which we love, or some of us really love, is we just started talking about the bank of hours. This is kind of the first year we've had a bank of hours built up, and even though we've lost 5.5 hours of instruction due to heat, we still have a bank of about 23 hours built up. So that's a little more than 3 full days. And so one of the questions that we had with the district leadership team and with the admin team was a desire to try to keep the instruction all before Memorial Day, if it, unless it's a crazy year. And one of the things that we kept coming back to was, well, I kept saying, I don't know how many late starts, early dismissals we have, because that cuts into our bank. And so, knowing that there was a keen desire on the teacher's part not to go after Memorial Day, and I can totally respect that, as a teacher and elementary principal. So then it was just a matter of how do we protect those hours? And so we hatched an idea that we would utilize late starts and early dismissals and have those be virtual or remote learning times, and not draw those out of our bank of hours, saving the bank of hours if we wanted to forgive a day or two of school at the end. And of course, we would only need to forgive a day or two of school if we get to 6 weather canceled days or more. And in case you're wondering, we average 5.77 weather related cancellations per year. I'll look into the audience with the principals. I know they've started to have conversations with their staff about what this might look like in anticipation of this at the board meeting. So at this time, we're just asking for the 5th day to be put on the calendar, and then the option, once we have it finalized or firmed up, to move forward on virtual learning, remote learning on late starts and early dismissals. So if there's a principal out there that wanted to add or talk about some of the feedback you've gotten on this. Or not. Justin, I feel like you and I talked a lot, not to put you on the spot, but I think you've heard from your teachers some of the ways that they envision it working for them. Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, no, we talked about, each building is a little bit different. Obviously, as you work with different students, whether elementary, high school, or in our case, the middle. As I talked to our staff about it, I was able to talk to each grade level team and then try to chat with some of our specialists too that aren't a part of those meetings, but just the opportunity to maybe create some efficiency with the planning, especially if it's an early release type option, or opportunity where we get out early, utilizing Canvas as we have as our LMS. I know that's been a push as far as Shannon Cornwall, Sean, for us to continue to utilize that. So being able to, check, if you miss 8th hour, hopefully a lot of things can be uploaded on Canvas and may already be uploaded on Canvas as the teacher uses it. So that could be an opportunity. With that for staff, just understanding you have some flexibility if we have a late start. Obviously from 8 to 10 is going to be a busy time for some families as they get their own kids ready, potentially shoveling the driveway. So create some flexibility where when they get it posted, some information posted for students and knowing students may work on that later that day in study hall or wind time or even after school. But again, looking at, posting, if you miss first and second hour, potentially posting information on Canvas, allowing students to access it there. If our staff, and we're still undecided on how we may do this, if it's approved, but we would have some flexibility to do some grade level type learning opportunities that connect to the standards. A lot of times there's a number of things that teachers want to do in the classroom they don't have time for. So this would be and some things that students can do that connect to the standards that they're covering in their classes. So middle school staff, as I talked to them, we're pretty favorable for this opportunity. We still maybe need to hash things out if it is approved, but we feel it could be a way to create some efficiency around what we're covering and continue that kind of learning continuum without overly missing a beat.
And just piggyback, one of the ideas that you and I talked through, if it's a late start day. And so just understand, one of the things about being a teacher and trying to do remote learning, if you have children of your own, they're home with you, it's not the most conducive environment. So just understanding that, and if you find out at 6 a.m., oh, my whole day is virtual, that's something that we felt, and we kind of heard from staff, was gonna be difficult. But one of the things that Justin pointed out was, if I teach the same class twice, and we just arrived at school at 10 o'clock and we go right into third period, and my first period class that I've missed, I teach 5th period, I can set up a videotape, and the instruction part of a lesson might be 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I can then upload that to Canvas, and it's not the same as face-to-face instruction, but it's similar instruction to what they would have gotten in the classroom.
So what we've talked about the middle school, like I said, we're in the middle. We do adolescent brain, 10 to 14-year-olds. And so the opportunity, as we think about a full virtual day, the opportunity to potentially plan for just a fraction of a virtual day as opposed to a whole virtual day was something that our staff seem to be on board with. Again, it's not going to look the exact same, but it'd be an opportunity to hopefully keep students up to speed that you wouldn't see if we didn't have this option, right? Like if on a normal day, if we get out early, you're missing 6, 7, 8 hour potentially, if you miss, dismiss at 12:30, you're missing all the students for sure that day. With this type of option, it's an opportunity for them to continue that. And yeah, will there be an element where you still need to catch students up who maybe didn't do all the work? Sure, but that's going to happen regardless. And so this would be an opportunity to again, hopefully create some efficiency with the planning, keep students learning on the same continuum, won't be the exact same, of course, but we felt definitely an option to consider.
And I know when we talked with the elementary staff, it's gonna look, they're not gonna do a virtual online, they're gonna do more of a remote packet type situation. High school, Brad, it's probably gonna be a little like what Justin described.
Very similar. I mean, we're still trying to hash out some of the details as it relates, so we're gonna have a BLT meeting tomorrow. We're gonna kind of go through some of this. There is definitely some things there. Like a lot of times when I talk to teachers on a snow day or they say they're still working anyway. So it kind of gives them credit for work that's already happening. We also have a lot of times when a teacher is out for a sub, the sub plans will entail go to Canvas and check out what's missing on Canvas. So kids are sort of used to doing this already. To Justin's point of it being asynchronous, like some of the feedback initially was like, well, how am I supposed to drive in unsafe conditions or stay at school? But I think to your point is really like some of that instructional time happening asynchronously, like through the computers at a time that's convenient for the kids. If you're an older kid in high school, you might have your younger siblings and you're the person taking care of them. from 1 to 3, so you might have to log on later on or do something different. I try to think about like, so it wasn't that long ago I was wearing the teacher hat, and so what would it be like, how would I have taught chemistry, for example, with something like this? And there's a lot of different ways you could do a bell schedule, but let's say we didn't have chemistry that day. Given what I know about our schedule, I would put something up on Canvas as kind of a, here's some things to do. I could use Flipgrid or any kind of video platform to give a tutorial. Here's what I'd like you to work on. I did that a lot on Waukee, and then, we've got flex time. So then any instruction that's missed, potentially, you could use your flex time or flex times the next time you have flex time to pull kids in for some just in time instruction if they've missed some instruction that the other classes got. So there are things within our system that can be used. Is it an apples to apples? No, it's not perfect. Like you had an 85-minute class that you missed. You're going to supplement a little bit with some asynchronous that you're going to do on the Canvas platform and potentially with some lectures that you might do in flex time, if that's the model we want to go with. But there are ways we could work through it. But I do want to sort of build our staff. This is just me thinking right now. And our staff want to kind of, does this make sense to you guys? Would you rather do like a 2-hour late start schedule where every period meets just for less time? And then we kind of have the morning for like supplementary stuff and question. I mean, there's ways you could do asynchronous a lot of ways. The reality is they're probably going to be working anyway. So this would at least give them opportunity to earn some credit towards something that they would have to do. And even when we have late start, early dismissal, there's less time that they have for their kids anyway, that they're probably supplementing somehow anyway. So this sort of just kind of beefs that up a little bit to a model that could work to count the hours. So we'll plan to talk about it more in our BLT and kind of, I think each building is going to have their own unique way of doing it a little bit based on their building. And then kind of like I think what Justin's doing on Friday the 13th, we're going to have a TQ day, PD, and we'll kind of talk about it with our whole staff and circle back and more solidify the plan. So.
And so the highlights are, we're still protecting face-to-face makeups for the first 5 days. This would, the use of virtual or learning on early dismissal, late arrivals just kind of protects our bank of hours so that if we got past 5 days, we could use them. State allows us to have up to 30 hours of virtual instruction. The average, I think I looked it up, it was like, we have about 3 late starts a year and, 3 early dismissals. So we're talking about 12 hours on average. So it's not a great big thing, but it is a shift of thinking. So obviously with the board's approval, we'll continue to move forward with staff and we won't send anything out until after people have had time to talk to their staffs. And we've got staffs and we've got an admin meeting on Thursday that we can also talk about it and meet more. So.
And my assumption is if you go forward with it and you actually have to implement it, if it doesn't work, you can want to something different next year.
Oh, for sure.
Nice option.
I would add into, just not to interrupt, but just to make sure that elementary world is up on board. I think it seems like a great compromise because we, again, it is a little easier on like a full snow day for high school, middle school teachers to some degree to, well, yeah, here it is. And they can put things out on Canvas and kids can do that remotely, on a snow day, where a whole day of doing that at the elementary is not like, wow, that's hard. But so this was that nice compromise, like, hey, we can keep things going. We can honor, get some, hours back through this. And yet it gives us that independence. So it's in a short little dose and hey, these are things that our kids, can do independently because we know a lot of them may not be in an environment where they can have somebody there with them all the time and do it. So it's things they can do anytime and hopefully do it independently as well. So just want to make sure you were aware that we were very supportive of elementary as
Thank
well.
you. I was wondering how you felt, so thank you for chiming in. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Does this all require an internet connection? I mean, if you don't have an internet connection at home and it's a snow day and you don't have your computer, well, the high school kids all take their computers home with them, but the elementary kids don't take iPads home with them.
So it's elementary, and so clarifying here again, even at the middle school, high school, yeah, we know there is some connectivity issues, but again, it's 2 hours we're talking, so chances are they're gonna be in school either, later that day on a late start, or they're gonna be there already and they can get their stuff before they leave, if it's an early out. Would be my just assumption there. And then at the elementary, we're not doing remote as far as going where they have to go on the campus. We're gonna do more. These are packets. They're in envelopes marked, and then it's like, we can just say, hey, you're gonna do packet 1 tonight, or for tomorrow. And then it's already kind of pre-made, and they can take that home whenever we decide, and how many, that's kind of our discussion too, like, what's that look like? And, how many do we want to send home at once? So, we don't want to make it crazy where, oh yeah, you got to keep this for 7 months, and where did I keep it as a parent, so.
So that, John, that's actually what the flexibility I think we really like about that is because sure, it could require some of that depending on what's assigned from the teacher, but especially if there's a late start, then that student's going to be in school that day. And there's a good chance they'll have a study hall or a time throughout the day to potentially get a start on that work. And so it'll create some flexibility, and teacher will have the understanding too, just like if a kid was sick, you might offer a little flexibility of when that's due. So it would actually create some flexibility for us.
And I think that's the part, the understanding that no matter what we put in place, there's gonna be some connectivity issues. If it's an early dismissal, you might, as a teacher, give a little bit more opportunity, a little extra time to get something done. But you can have students face to face and not get an assignment done. And what do you do in that situation? But maybe a little bit more grace in this situation, just kind of understanding that there's lots of variables that go into it.
So this really isn't kind of the snow day makeup stuff. Because that's, a snow day to me is you cancel school at 5 o'clock in the morning, you don't even go in.
No,
This is more of a early dismissal continuation. For credit hours to be done after dismissal. But it's still yeah, I understand the elementary people are gonna be pre-stocking some envelopes for their individual classrooms, the teachers are, to hand out as they are about ready to walk out the door, that, busy work to do at home. I'm sorry to label it that way, but to me, if you're, I don't know how a teacher can, anticipate where their curriculum is currently at. And, I hate, doing math worksheets. My kids had to do them, and as a parent, you have to sit there with them, and that's just old school teaching. I don't even.
Well, a lot of it really should be at the elementary level review, because we like to spiral and go back to things. It could be even 20 minutes of reading, because they're gonna miss their read to self time when they're in school. So it's not all just worksheets that they might be doing.
Yeah,
PE activity.
yeah, I think there's opportunity for creativity. I mean, I don't know if Mr. Alberts was 100% serious, but he was talking about writing snow day poems or haikus, but there'd be an opportunity for students to do some non-worksheet activities that would reflect engaging in the learning process. And but that's all going to be the age of the student, the preparation. You can't expect everything from everybody, but
Right. So I think with any new thing that comes along, there's an opportunity to roll out and then review and then reassess next year to see how well this whole thing goes, and the future board certainly and with the principals and so like that can review with the district leadership team and the teachers and input from parents whether or not this is something that works. It sounds like a interesting opportunity, but and I think it's driving at trying to prevent students from continuing on in June, but I've always which is, I think, a good thing, but at the same time, the face-to-face instruction with the teacher in the classroom is hard to replace. They're very good at what they do, and hopefully, something good can come out of the packets or the work that continues on. I've said enough.
Any other discussion? Hearing nothing more, would anybody like to make a motion?
You see it highlighted, you have this change is still in work in process and will be implemented without, will not be implemented without more opportunities for teacher input. Do you want a recommendation?
Yeah, I think if you give us the authority to do it, we're not gonna roll something out if it's not ready to go. So, with any luck, we won't have to have any late start or early dismissals for a month or two, maybe even 3. Justin's coughing to that statement. Yeah, we just want to have the flexibility, because if we're ready to go and, could be all fired up this Friday, and then we would like to get information out, make sure parents kind of understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar revisions for the 2023-2024 school calendar that was discussed.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1. Okay, moving onward. We've scheduled some time to talk about the tuition agreement, which has been in place with the Mabel Canton School District for the past 5 years. Tim, I believe you've done some summarization. You got.
Yeah, I
Some
think,
information for us?
so, I kind of went back in and just look, as coming in and kind of trying to understand this and reading old board minutes when the previous board discussed it, and then sharing some of that stuff. I had gone back to, looks like the August 22nd of 2018, when the board discussed it. And just kind of as a reminder, maybe for myself, President Fadness stated, after extensive research, the Department of Education doesn't allow grandfathering in students to finish out-of-state tuition after consolidation. The newly formed district would have to choose all or none, because I think there was a question about, could we just let the students there finish? And that's not an option. Superintendent Cupfall, Mabel Canton, stated that the tuition in rate would be $1,500 for K-6 or $2,000 for 7-12. He can't speak to what the board, but he anticipates that rate would increase. So there was a discussion there, a vehicle for how students could pay tuition to come in. Currently, the notes are 14 students open enroll from North Winnebago to Mabel Canton. And then the cost of those students is approximately $100,000. So it was 14 students in 2018, but that, and then there was a October 17th, 2018 board meeting where a survey was done, and it talked about 14 to 15 students from Mabel Canton would want to continue at 14 to 15 North Winnebago students would want to continue after consolidation at Mabel Canton. And the board at that time discussed, should we have this go 3, 5, or 7 years? And a vote was, Mabel Canton Superintendent Gary Kupfel was at that meeting, stated that he felt the number of students wanting to attend Mabel Canton would be declining and there'd be a natural break. And at that meeting, the board did take action to extend it for 5 years. And so we're in that start of that 5th year. And then I did prepare, just kind of looking on students and numbers. So in 2019, 2020, it was 36. The following year was 32, then it was 36 students, 30 students, and then this year we anticipate about 30 students that are Iowa residents are enrolled, and tuition is being paid up to Mabel Canton. As a reminder, the per pupil cost that the district gets per student is $7,635. So that's roughly $229,000 of the, would be the tuition that Decorah would pay to Maple Camp. I know this is not without a lot of emotions, so I just try to present some facts and numbers and maybe answer the questions that I've been asked. We do get, it's interesting, not interesting. One of the things I looked at was just, because the offer has to be made to everybody, we do get new students that request. Last year we did 5, is kind of how I got into it. We had 1 new student the year before, we had 7 the year before, so on average, we're about 2.5 students that request to go up to Mabel Canton a year that are new. And that's one of the things I know this board kind of felt, or it's been communicated to me and in reading the notes, that it was just like to help kids graduate high school. But obviously by the numbers, it has continued. So that's what I've learned about the agreement. I can add that I was told early on that there's a bus that drives into Iowa to pick up students. I did talk to Superintendent Cupful. He's well aware of that. That's a bus that's been hired, a private company that drives bus, and, just understanding how things work. And this is a difference between maybe Iowa and Minnesota, but no district in Iowa that I'm aware of would allow a district to drive into their boundaries and pick up students and take them to a different district. You might, for special circumstances, for special ed or